You're listening to episode 86, Starlyn's story, 1 in 11 million, quadruplets from a single embryo. Hello, my friends. I'm so happy that you're here today. If you follow along with me on Instagram, and hi, by the way, I'm Katie Taylor, certified child life specialist. You know, ever since I had to get rid of these introduction that I used to have where it introduced what we are and who we do, I totally forget to tell my name at the top of these podcasts. But that is just Katie brain for you, and I'm okay with it. So I'm just going to tell you all about it now. I am a certified child life specialist, which means we help kids and families cope in the hospital. And I am so excited because I actually have a friend of mine here today. And she is a hilarious, loving, kind, very New Jersey. And if you're from New Jersey, you know what I mean. Like, she's a New Jersey person. Her name is Starlyn, and we have her on the podcast today. She and her husband, Bill, have struggled with infertility pretty much their entire marriage. And we'll get more into the details of it later. But basically, theirs is a miraculous, and there's just no other way to put it, story about having one embryo and ending up with 4 babies. Never mind the fact that it was during the Texas snowstorm back in March, and she had to be separated from her babies in the NICU. So I am so honored to have her here and have Starlyn share their really unique story about what it was like to be pregnant with quadruplets, spend time in antepartum and be separated from her child, and then also have babies in the NICU and not be able to visit them literally because of a natural disaster and, oh yeah, COVID. So I'm going to go ahead and get quiet so we can start hearing from Starlyn. Guys, Katie Taylor here, podcast host, Child Life On Call. I'm sitting here in my closet with my good friend Starlyn, and if you follow me on social media, then you know I'm her big hype girl. She's my very good friend who just happened to have 4 babies. Wow.
At one time.
At one time. Yeah, that's a good distinction. And Starlyn and I met because she is a pediatric ER nurse at the hospital that I work at. And basically what I do is I force myself into these people's lives and make them become my best friends. And so that's exactly what I did for you.
Yeah, I mean, you told my husband we were best friends the first time you met him, so.
Yeah. And he was like, oh, okay, who the hell is this crazy girl?
Yeah.
That's just me. So Starlyn, I'm going to let her introduce herself and talk a bit about her story, but I have her on the podcast today because she is not the first person to experience infertility and then kind of come out on the other side, but have a deep level of empathy for other families who are going through similar stuff. And they're obviously a success story. She had 4 babies at once, for dear God's sake. But I just thought it would be fun to have her kind of talk about her experience for her infertility journey, having quadruplets, being in antepartum for 2 weeks, actually more than that.
Yeah, from the day I got admitted to the day I got discharged was 3 weeks. So it was like 2.5 weeks that I was living there.
Yeah, living at the hospital, separated, and then being a NICU mom.
Mm-hmm. 2 months in the NICU.
2 months in the NICU. Anyway, she's got a lot to talk about. So, Starlyn, why don't you just start off and talk a bit about you and Bill and your family and kind of where y'all come from.
Okay. Well, hi, my name is Starlyn. I am Katie's best friend, as she would tell you. But I'm also a mom to 5 children under the age of 3. I have one turning 3 in a couple of weeks, but she's our first infertility success. My husband and I have been married for 10 years, been together for much longer than that. And we knew pretty much early on that we were infertile. We were not having any success getting pregnant. We started going to get testing. I got pregnant on my own, like miraculously, and then lost that baby. And then we went on to do all different types of treatment. And then we finally landed on having to do IVF. And when we did IVF, we only got 3 embryos, which is why no one ever believes us when we talk about how many kids we have. So we got the 3 embryos. Our first transfer resulted in Zoe, who will be 3 in the beginning of August. And that was in 2018. In October of 2019, we transferred our second embryo, which failed. And so we were left with 1 embryo. And the reason we didn't try again right away was because I was very much like a planner. I need to know if this doesn't work, what's the next step? Because I want more kids. I mean, I didn't want 5 kids, but I wanted more kids than one. And, we would have a lot of conversations about that. We met with our fertility doctor, who I trusted or trust her still more than anything in this world. I had conversations of like what we would do next. Would we try IUIs again? Because once you are successfully pregnant, your chance of IUIs being successful goes up. Again, they just told us a lot of money, told us that we would never get pregnant on our own. And so a lot of testing, a lot of money, a lot of time. I had multiple surgeries like this, obviously it's a Cliff Notes version. And so we transferred our last embryo on July 1st, 2020. And I remember we were 6 weeks pregnant, and I said to our friend Kami, who's my manager, also our friend, I was like, I think I'm showing. And she's like, there's no way. I knew it worked. Our lab work had come back a little higher than it was with Zoe, like twice the size it was with Zoe. And she's like, there's no way. Well, then I go to work one morning and I start spotting. And so I call my husband and he's like, all right, let's just go. We hadn't told anybody that we were doing the transfer, or just like a few close friends. We didn't want our parents to know. We were trying to surprise everybody. We went in for an ultrasound and we thought we were going there to be told we were losing our baby because we were bleeding. And our baby. It was funny because when they told us our first labs, Bill was like, what if it's twins? And then we laughed and laughed because what are the chances? We put one embryo in, unless it's split, identicals don't run in our family. There's no way, right? So we get there and everybody is very somber in the office because that's what we're coming in for. We check in, they're like, oh, it's okay. Let's just go back to the office. Do you need anything? Do you need water? They're all trying to do some polite stuff. And I'm like, okay, it's fine. I'm really trying to hold it together. We get into this office and they put us in the smaller than this closet. I swear there's 4 of us in there. The doctor, one of her nurses, Bill, my husband, and I. We do this ultrasound. And as soon as she puts the ultrasound in, I was like, huh. Because right away could see that there's 2 sacs. And she's like, well. And Bill's like, has it moved? And he's like, this looks different than Zoe, And she's like, well, there's 2 sacs. And he's like, okay, twins, all right. Okay, all right. And I'm like, okay, this is 1 sac we're looking at, and I could see 2 babies in it right away. So it's like, all right, okay, cool. And so she's like, these 2 have heartbeats. Would be identical twins. She's like, but there's also a second sac, and I see this one. And so I start hyperventilating. It's coronavirus time, so I have a mask on. I'm sweating. I had my scrubs on still from work. I start hyperventilating. I'm like, I need a break. God. And I sit up, and I'm like, I'm going to throw up. And they're like, it's fine. And then she's like, but I think there's another one. And so I was like, there's no way. We put 1 in, right? And she's like, yeah, we only had 1 left. And I was like, are you sure? How did this happen? She's like, I think you got pregnant on your own at the same time. I'm like, there's no way. We paid you a lot of money to tell us that we cannot get pregnant. What do you mean? Has to be a joke. And so, of course, there's the 4th one. And from that moment, they told us, you got to get rid of some of them. They're not going to make it. This one looks small, not going to make it. And that was our first visit. We were 6.5 weeks pregnant. And I was showing because she was like, you're measuring at a 14-week singleton pregnancy.
Oh God.
And I was like, okay, first of all, I knew I was showing.
Yeah.
And everyone kept telling me, you're just bloated.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, my body feels different. But that was our first visit. And we went to so many visits after that where they just, told us everything that was going to go wrong, which every pregnancy is terrifying. But to be told that this pregnancy was going to be we weren't going to end up having these babies was just, especially someone that went through nefertility. It was such a weird situation for them to be like, well, do you want to keep all these babies? And I was like, yeah, I think so. I mean, I had no idea, you never go into anything expecting this to happen. Even a normal, you got pregnant naturally with no help or anything. And then we went through all this work to get pregnant. And my first question from everybody was all right, you got to get rid of them, right? And I was like, wait, this seems so counterproductive to what we were doing here.
It's interesting because you are obviously a medical professional who understands the risks of carrying multiples for many different reasons.
Right. Yeah.
But when you're in that situation, you're not thinking about that. You're thinking, I have my 4 babies.
Right. For sure. And my husband in the beginning, his first question was is my wife going to be okay?
Yeah.
That was his first question. My first question was are these babies going to be okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we would fight, and he was mad. He's like, you have a life here. We've been married for a really long time. We've been together a long time, and you're not thinking about me. And we have a daughter who would be lost without you.
Oh.
You're not thinking about her. And I'm like, I am, but you don't understand because you haven't met them yet, but I know them and I can't think of it. And, we'd fight about it a lot. It was like a conversation. You're like, IVF, have you ever done it? You've never had to do it, but if you ever do, they ask you the weirdest questions that they're like, if you died or married someone else, and you're like, what? Like, what do you mean? They're like, sign this paperwork here. What would you do? And you're like, I don't know. We never thought about this. So, this was completely unprepared for. And so I was already like, all right, well, we're having 4 babies. And Bill was like, no, we need to talk to people about this.
Yeah.
And like you said, I'm a medical professional. And I was like, all right, like, what's the average gestational age for quadruplets? 28 weeks, right? At 28 weeks, that's on the long end. Like, what's the genetic abnormalities it can have? Like, should we do genetic testing? What can they be born with if they're born at 28 weeks or at high risk for these complications? And Bill's like, blah, blah. My first call to anybody was to our NICU director. And I was like, is there such a thing as healthy quadruplets? And she's like, that is such a random question. I'm like, but it's not really, though.
Yeah.
And then, I told her I was like 7 weeks pregnant. And then, she got me in with the best MFM in our area. She got the best high risk OB. And those were my questions. Like, can they be healthy? And they're like, can they? Yeah. Will they? We hope so. There's all these risks. And, Bill is very much like anything medical. He's like, you talk to them and then give me like the Cliff Notes version.
Right.
And so we even called the doctor. There's a doctor in Houston. I don't even remember his name now because he's irrelevant, but he's like the one that specializes in doing fetal reductions for high risk and high order multiples. We called him and it was like a 45-minute lecture on like why we had to do it. These are the babies he would reduce. This is everything that's going to be wrong with them. There's a 95% chance that they'll be all messed up. He sent us all these like medical studies that were like, the most recent ones from like 2001. And it was like any baby born before 28 weeks is going to be highly developmentally retarded, congenital defects, like all these things, which terrified my husband, right? Because he gets this email, he's reading it. I'm like, these studies are not up to date. These are 20 years old. And he's like, it hasn't changed. I'm like, 100% has changed.
Right.
Like medicine changes daily.
Yeah.
So I went to my MFM and I printed everything out that he sent me. And I was like, this is not current information. I want to see our hospital's current information. I want to see your statistics.
Yeah.
I want to see our NICU statistics. Because I need to know, like, is this realistic? And of course, it wasn't. Like, I've met next 23 weekers that are completely healthy.
Right, right.
So like for him to be like, there's a 100% chance that any baby born before 28 weeks is going to have all this stuff wrong. I'm like, that's wrong.
Yeah, that's not correct. It's crazy as your friend listening to you tell this story, and it's not a story, it's your life. But just like how much of the beginning was anticipated loss or grieving not healthy babies.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even get excited when you think your life is on the line, your baby's lives, and then subsequently Zoe's life and Bill's life? It's crazy.
And I remember like every doctor we went to was like, you have to reduce, like you have to do it. And then I'm like, okay, how do you choose to do reduction? I even was connected with someone that I knew through someone who knew someone who knew someone that did a reduction. I connected with them, had a conversation with them about it. And about what they went through, because I wanted to know like what that mindset was. I was willing to do the research. In my heart, I was like 100% no. With every reduction of fetus, like there's a percentage of risk to the other fetus. They're like, it's low, it's 10%. Like the percentage of us having this happen is less than 0.1. So don't give me a 10% and say it's not a big deal. That's a huge deal. You're talking to less than 1% person here.
Right.
And so I would tell Bill, like, I didn't really enjoy the pregnancy because every day I would get any ache and pain, which was a lot of ache and pains, and be like, this is it. We're done.
Yeah.
And so when we went to see our MFM and whatever, and our OB, like, and they would give us all these speeches about like all these things that could happen. Again, I'm going to all these appointments alone because it's COVID and nobody can come with me. And I remember I had like a subchorionic hemorrhage in the beginning, like 8 weeks pregnant. And I was like, here we go. Like I got up out of bed and, it was like bleeding and I was like, this is it. And so they let Bill come in and they're like, no, you just have like a big bleed there. Like, this is crazy. I can't believe you haven't lost it. Really, everyone was just like shocked that I was still pregnant. And it was like 11 weeks. I started bleeding again. And she's like, they don't talk to you about reduction until like, I think 11 or 12 weeks. You have to be that far along. I turned to her. I was like, if I decide not to do this, will you be my doctor? And she was like, yeah. I was like, okay. Cause I feel like we haven't had a conversation yet where you're like, this is what the pregnancy is going to be like. It's been like, you should reduce.
Right.
And she was like, no, I have to give you all the risks. But once you tell me you've made the decision, we're done. And she never brought it up again after that conversation. And I remember like, because I would leave and be like, all right, I feel like she's still like thinking that I'm going to reduce or I'm going to lose one of them or whatever, which the way I explained to my husband, like if we did a reduction and something happened to the other remaining babies, I would never forgive myself. I'd always think that I had a contributing factor. But if we tried to keep these pregnancy and I've lost all 4 of them at some point because of something, I would know that I did my best as their mom to keep them safe. And it just wasn't meant to be. I mean, it would be devastating for sure, but I would not have the guilt of, oh crap, I did this.
Oh man. So the babies are staying.
Mm-hmm.
You get very pregnant very fast.
So I was off of work for 2 weeks. So I found out on a Tuesday. I had planned vacation, which is weird because my vacation got canceled that we were going to do because of COVID. And then my husband and I were like, let's just keep the days off and just like hang out at home and like do a staycation. I'll be off for 2 weeks, blah, blah, blah. When I came back, my belly was big.
I remember when you told me, I think you were pretty early. We were sitting at our daughters are the same age and they were both in swim class together. And we were sitting there and you were so quiet. Mm-hmm. And I was like, God, what is wrong with her? I was like, I just want to chat. But you were so scared.
Yeah, I was terrified.
And it's so crazy because, Starlyn, you're not a fearful person. Mm-hmm. You take life head on. You, like, as my dad calls it, run to the danger, which is my favorite type of person because there's just no questioning. You know exactly how Starlyn feels about something. So to watch you be scared and vulnerable was pretty crazy. So you're pregnant. Let's fast forward to the antepartum phase when you got admitted to the hospital and you made it so far.
Yes.
Like you kept having personal goals. Like, yeah. I want to make it this far. Okay, I guess I want to make it this far. Tell us about that. My goal was
like, I really was like, let me get a holiday out. So like my due date was March 19th. 24 weeks was Thanksgiving Day. 28 weeks was Christmas Day. And so I remember she was like, it's not when you go to the hospital or if you go to the hospital, it's when. She's like, and on average, that's 24 weeks. I'm like, dang, that's Thanksgiving. Like, I just want to have a holiday with Zoe. I really don't want to miss Christmas. Like, 28 weeks is pushing it, especially when they're like, that's probably when I'll have them. I mean, I stopped working in like 18 weeks because I was the size of a full-term pregnancy. And, God, I mean, people would congratulate me like, any day now. I'm like 20 more weeks, but thank you. Like, it's not even halfway there, but thank you. So I got admitted New Year's Eve. So it was 28 weeks, 7 or 6 days. Like, Friday was my week change. And they only like admitted me because they were like, you shouldn't be moving around anymore. Mm. Like I had like signs of, not my cervix was thinning, but like it was starting to like show signs of thinning.
It's crazy.
It was just, my doctor would be like, you're such a good incubator. Like I would waddle into the appointments and they're like, I cannot believe you're still pregnant. I'm like, I know. Really, dude? Like,
it's so crazy. There's just no rhyme or reason. And you think because maybe you've experienced so much infertility and procedures that you would be at risk for.
Right, because I had multiple surgeries to my uterus for like a abnormal shaping in my uterus or whatever. And so then I asked her, I was like, does that make me at risk for a uterine rupture? Because that's like one of the complications, which is like, they're like, uterine rupture is like death. Yeah. And Bill's like, was the biggest thing he was scared of, or hemorrhaging, whatever. And they said no. Yeah, they were like, I can't believe you're still up and moving. Like I drove myself to my appointment, which was December 30th. And she's like, you need to be in the middle hospital. I was like, okay, well, I got some things to do today. So I'm going to get my nails done.
Eat your sushi.
I'm going to get sushi, which is against the rules. But at that point, I was like, I'm carrying quadruplets. No one's going to tell me what to do. And then I was like, I'll be back tomorrow. And I wanted to like see my daughter one more time. Like I wanted to not have like that anxiety for her. Like I wanted it to be like, this is what mommy's doing. Zoe's very, very intelligent and understood a lot of it. And I just want to prepare her. So then I get him into the hospital. It was like, okay. And then Bill left and I was there alone. And I was like, I'm having quadruplets.
Oh my God.
And I remember being like, all of like the anxiety about the babies was gone, but it was just like, what is the delivery going to be like? Like, I remember like the first time they came, like, give any questions? I'm like, am I going to die? Like when this happens, and they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, like I'm scared. My OB was like, you've never mentioned this. So I was like, I mean, I was just kind of like, let's make it to the hospital.
Oh my God. It's like you have to compartmentalize which stretch of stress you're going to be in, because if you were to think about all of them, you wouldn't be able to get through it.
Yeah.
One of the things about antepartum, which is crazy, especially during COVID, right, is not being able to see visitors and having people come visit, and there's not like a quilting group in the entertainment room. You know, it's like you're just on your own. How did you get through 3 weeks by yourself?
It was horrible. And like, I got 1 hour a day where I could leave my room, which I had to like beg for, but Zoe didn't come up every day. And so I would FaceTime with her a lot. And I don't know if anybody's ever FaceTime a 2-year-old, but she's like not into it unless she's into it, you know?
And gets more confused and sad, probably.
And sad. And then, like, she would act really silly on the phone. And so then I would see her, like, once or twice a week. Bill would come up 3 or 4 times a week. My parents kept her a lot. We had a lot of help from, like, family members. And she would come visit me and, like, bring her little, like, Power Wheels. And I'd get to spend an hour with her, which is not really long. But I couldn't really pick her up anymore. I couldn't do fun things with her. Like, and she was so worried about me. She was always very worried about me because I was always like, ouch, this hurts. I can't move.
Yeah.
So sitting on the bed the whole time. Like, we moved into a new house and she had her bedroom upstairs and I didn't see it until literally March, I think. It was when I was able to walk up and down stairs. And so it's like.
Did she look at you and be like, Mommy, you look different? Did she ever
would, like,
comment
look
on
at
you?
my belly and be like, there's babies in there?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. She's like, that's weird.
Yeah.
I'm like, you live there too. And she's like, no, I didn't. I live here. I'm like, but you did. And she's like, no.
How did you prepare Zoe for having 4 siblings?
I bought her 4 baby dolls, and I would tell her, like, the semi-babies are in mommy's belly. You have 3 sisters and a brother coming. Like, this is their names. We could refer to them as names. Like, this is Frankie. This is whatever. And now she calls everybody Francesca. She only knows Enzo, Stella, and Frankie and Francesca. She calls Lennon.
Lennon doesn't get a name.
No. And so we, like, bought her these 4 dolls, and we talk about it, and she's always like, that's weird. And I'm like, you know, she's going to go to kindergarten, and her friends are like, my mom's having a baby. And she's like, just 1. That's weird.
That's
like,
weird.
Your mom's only having 1 baby? That's okay. Why are you excited? But we talked a lot about it. We made sure we, like, refer to them as names. We, like, she picked out Lennon's name. And so.
The one she can't remember.
The one she can't remember, which is, like, the funniest part. Because I'm like, you chose this name. And so we talked to her about it a lot. And then I remember when I got admitted, I called Child Life and I was like, you should help these women in antepartum that don't get to see their kids and talk to them about, like, how do I explain to Zoe, like, why I need to be in the hospital? Because she was just like, she would say, Mommy needs to go to the hospital. The doctors are taking care of her. And she still didn't, she'd be like, why aren't you coming home? Are you okay?
Right.
And then she was, because I was there for so long, she was like worried. Are you okay? Are you okay? The longer I was there, she would say, are you okay? Do you promise? Like, she was so scared. I think she was really scared I wasn't going to come home. And then, you know, I was there for 3 weeks. And then when we had the baby, she couldn't see me until I came home. Came home using a walker. I came home with, like, a wound vac on, things that I didn't even think about. So when I came home, she was so scared of that. Yeah. Plus my belly was gone. I had a huge belly. I was measuring, like 70 weeks pregnant or something.
Where the hell are the babies you were talking about?
And I remember you guys came and brought me, like, a kit, and we talked about diapers and baby bottles. So she was playing with, like, the baby bottle randomly yesterday. And that helped prepare her some because they were so tiny. They were about the same size as that doll that you gave her when they came home. Because she was small. But yeah, she didn't get to come to the hospital. She came and we sat outside, which was freezing in January. But she never got to see them in the NICU. And we would FaceTime with the babies, and she would say, like, I just want to see them. Or she would say, I want to smell them.
I want to smell them.
Like, you're weird, but okay. Like,
you guys want to know how smart I am? Is that I'm the child life specialist in the NICU at the hospital that Starlyn delivered at. So I got to go see the babies before anybody else. And so it's very special to me. Am I a godparent? No, but that's okay, guys. There's only 4. It's hard to choose your favorite 4 people.
We'll be right back. As a child life specialist who has worked with hundreds of children and families over the past decade, I know that no 2 children are the same. That means I need access to tools that can easily adapt to whatever situation I'm in. SmileMakers has thousands of unique items that help me navigate every scenario, whether I'm looking for stickers and prizes for goodie bags for my patients or even my own kids, or I'm in child life specialist mode, working clinically to help a child cope with a medical procedure. I'm happy to support SmileMakers because they are a company who prioritizes the mental and emotional well-being of children by offering smiles on every page. Head to smilemakers.com when you're looking for a tool, toy, or prize to help a child smile. Use code ONCALL20 for 20% off your order of smile-making stickers, toys, patient supplies, and more.
Okay, let's go to you mentally preparing for surgery and, like, having this crisis of worrying about yourself and being scared, but also worrying about your babies, and how many people were in the delivery room and all that.
So when I first got in, they were like, all right, you're going to meet with all these people, the neonatologist, you're going to meet with everybody. And so I would have all these, like, medical visitors all day, like, preparing me. And I remember I met with the special deliveries, Melanie was her name, for the NICU. But then special deliveries for women's came. And so we talked together. They're like, there's going to be 40 people in the delivery. Or every day they would say, first it was like, there's going to be 12 people in the delivery room.
12.
And the next day they're like, there's going to be 16. And I was like, it was 12. And they're like, but it's 16 now. And they're like, there's going to be like 26.
Oh,
and I'm like,
God.
Okay. And they're like, every baby's going to have a team and it's going to be this. And they would show you pictures. They had like an OR set up and it was like baby A had an RT, 2 nurses. Everybody had RT. Then there was a nurse practitioner. Then there was a doctor. There was like a sign up sheet. Like they kept talking about what date I was going to carry to. And they kept trying, I think you can make it to 35 weeks. And I remember I turned to Bill and I was like, I'm not making it 35 weeks. I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, I will check out of this hospital. I'm not staying pregnant anymore. Like I was crying. I was like, there is no way I could do that. I was like 31 weeks. So I was like, I can't do this for 4 more weeks.
Yeah. It was hard. So I was also able to go visit her and like watching you couldn't breathe. Mm-hmm. There was a piece of trash on your floor for a while that we just kind of kept there as like a social experiment. Is anybody going to pick it up for her? I don't know.
It was like a piece of a pepper packet or something. It was there for so long. And I would look at it and like try and pick it up with my feet and it wouldn't work.
And you couldn't even like eat a lot and enjoy stuff. Like
I couldn't sleep. And then I developed PUPS and cholestasis. And so I went into labor on my own. I was supposed to be induced on that Friday. That Monday, they're like doing nurse to nurse at shift change at bedside. And I was like, I don't mean to interrupt you guys, but I'm having contractions. And they were like, I was like, and at that point I had no monitors on, no IV, nothing. Cause I was very, They came in my room at 9 p.m., gave my meds for the night, and I never saw them again. I didn't see night shift again, unless I woke up like and I wanted a snack. But I never saw them. They put on the monitor, and I'm like, that's not where my contractions are, because I have this huge belly. Yeah. And I was like, I think you should put it like here. And at the same time, my MFM happened to walk in to tell me that they were going to have to move my date up because of my cholestasis and the risk and blah, blah, blah.
Wait. So you could feel which section of your belly the contractions were on.
Right. It was like coming from my one side, and they put the monitor on the other side. And I'm like, no, it's like the babies were kind of more over here. Like,
is it crazy
was
painful?
In the middle. Heck yeah. You know, with Zoe, I had contractions. They started a minute apart.
Yeah.
And I was like, epidural.
Yeah.
But here, I was like, I'm going to get a C-section. So it was like 7:05, I started contractions. It was funny. There's a TikTok video. I was talking about this on their 6-month birth order. We like made this TikTok in the hospital. And this is how we got like these. We have like 590,000.
By the way, Starlyn's very famous. Hashtag calf squad.
On TikTok. But the one video is like me dancing. And it's like my little stick legs and my belly. And I look like I am miserable because I was so mad at Bill that day because he kept making me. But I just felt like crap. And I didn't sleep the night before. I was probably in labor, didn't know it. That video, like I remember when he sent it to me and I was like, I don't care. I'm tired. I want a nap. And he's like, yeah, you should nap. And then I was like, oh, I'm in labor. Come back. We're about to have these kids. And so I went to labor on my own. My MFM was like, well, if you're in labor, I'm not stopping it. Like, you're far enough along. You're going to have these babies today. I was like, but I'm not ready. Like, am I going to be okay? Like, guys, am I going to be all right? And then it was at night shift and everybody had signed up to be on the delivery. It was like on day shift. So they had to call NICU nurses in. And they're like, let's push it back. I'm like, but can we get some like pain meds? Because I'm still in labor. And I'm like, I need IV. Like, so the nurse was like, they had assigned me to like the charge nurse because again, I didn't need anything. And so I was like her only patient.
Yeah.
And she's like, son of a biscuit. And then she's like, all right, what do we do? She's like, oh, what do we do? I'm like, let's start with IVs. I need a COVID test. Because all the stuff they had been telling me was going to happen. I'm like, I need to get the anti-whatever. And like all these things that they had been telling me.
Talking about like being an advocate for yourself.
Because I was like, they would tell me all this stuff and then I would just think about it all day. I'm like, I wonder what it's going to be like. And it was scheduled. They're like, so it's going to be at 9 a.m. So at 7 we'll come in. Blah, blah.
So when did the first baby come out after your first contraction?
My first contraction was 7:05 p.m.
Uh-huh.
And Lennon came at 10:42.
Oh my God.
Enzo was at 10:43. Frankie was at 10:44 and Stella was at 10:46.
That's so much coordination.
And I will tell you, like, everyone always comments on, because there's a video of us like having the babies. Everyone's like, there's like 40 people in there. And people are like, that's terrifying. I'm like, all I can look at all these people and like, God forbid something goes wrong. All the people are here are going to take care of us. Anything happens to the babies, they'll take care of them. Anything happens to me, they'll take care of me.
Yeah.
That's all I could think of.
Yeah. I love the way, the way you put it, like, this is just the way it was, but like every baby had a team. Mm-hmm. Like, and then you had your own team.
Right.
It's really cool.
And I remember at one point, like that day, Bill's like, what do I do? And everyone's like, no one's talking about what you're doing. He's like, no. And he's like, what do you want me to do? He's like, I want to stay with you. I'm like, you're going to go with that baby. I'm like, none of our babies are going to be in the NICU by themselves. So the first baby that goes, you go with them. He's like, but what if the fourth baby isn't out? I'm like, they'll be out by the time they stabilize. I mean, they're all out within 6 minutes of each other. Yeah, they came out and I remember I was like, let me know when this starts. And they're like, there's a baby crying. I was like, yeah, whose baby is that? They're like, yours. It's like, I was so shocked. So I thought, like, for sure I'd feel something. I felt nothing. Because I thought in my head I could feel stuff still. I was like, when this starts working, they're like, there's a baby. It's already out. That crying is your baby. And I remember they're like, it's a girl. And I was like, it's Lennon. And I was like, that's Lennon. And saying whatever. And our doctor, everyone's like, they're so big because they're all over 3 pounds. And they all told me they were going to be like less than 2 pounds. And so it was like all crazy. But I felt like I was in there for hours. And it was like 12 minutes from when I got in there to when Bill got to, like, they were ready to like start the C-section and Bill wasn't in the room yet. And people were like, wait, like, gotta go get dad. And he comes in and he's like, he was so frantic. And like, Bill is a very calm person too. So we're both like pretty chill people. And he was like running around. He has his camera out and he's like, just like, what baby is this? What baby? Like over and over. And he's like, what baby is this? Who's what? And I'm like, all right, well, Stella is the smallest one. And she was the last one out. We know Enzo because he's the only boy.
Yeah.
And he's like, the twins look so much like each other. Oh my gosh. And he's like yelling and he kept running to me and trying to show me pictures. And I'm like, boy.
Yeah.
Like whatever. And Stella was the only one that didn't need like CPAP right away. So I got to see her face. And then they were all gone. And it was like 30 minutes. And I was like, that was so crazy. And the room was so quiet. And so whatever. And like one of the OR techs was like, I follow you on TikTok.
I've been waiting for this moment.
And I was like, what? And she's like, I follow you on TikTok. It's crazy. And I'm like, cool.
That's
like,
so
please don't
crazy.
tell anybody you saw me like this. Or whatever. I forgot what I said. I was just like, thank you. I don't know to tell you. I'm like, are they done sewing me back up? And then I went to the NICU and it was like, they had been home.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I never showed you this footage of them like walking to the NICU.
Wow.
I'm like,
yeah.
You didn't think that's something I'd want to see?
Yeah. No, just the TikTok world, not actually you. Bill has taken on the role of momager, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. I mean, it is a crazy story, and Bill and Starlyn have such a strong, like, foundation of their relationship and also who they are. So it's really fun to watch them. And you and I kind of talked about when you have a baby in the NICU or 4 babies in the NICU, how it's just such a weird experience of wanting to be there, but also not wanting to be there. And it feels really strange, and that a lot of moms can have guilt for not wanting to go to the NICU, especially those first couple days right after.
Yeah.
Like, you feel like crap, right? You just had surgery.
I was using a walker.
A walker, a wound vac.
Yes.
I mean, like, sweating. Like, think about, like, your boob sweat, and, like, it's terrible, and you're in a hospital gown.
It was horrible. It's like the first, like, that night, I could not stop throwing up, but I hadn't met them yet.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to go see them just to make sure they're okay. And I had a not so great nurse, and she was like, okay. I mean, I was throwing up. And she's like, are you going to stop throwing up? I'm like, sure. And she like dropped me off there, and I'm like vomiting.
Oh my God. You're vomiting at the NICU bedside?
No, I like held it in.
Oh, okay.
And I got back. One of our girlfriends, Tony's a social worker in the NICU, and she's like, I'll bring you back to your room. And as soon as we got there, I stood up and just vomited everywhere. Oh. My day nurse comes in. She's like, why were you there? I'm like, I wanted to meet them. She's like, we could have just like wheeled you by so you could see them and came back to bed. Like the nurse like rolled me into the NICU and was like, bye. But the NICU was like a weird place. I worked there in that facility, so I saw some people I knew, right? And I felt as bad as I looked, I'm sure. And all the monitors are beeping, and I felt like I couldn't touch them. But I had a kid at home I hadn't seen in 3 weeks who needed me. And then I was in so much pain. Like my bed is a little bit higher than normal, maybe like an inch higher than a normal bed, which made it felt like it could have been 20 feet at that point.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sleeping, and then I'm like having to get up and pump every 3 hours. And like and I know they mean well, and like everybody tries really hard, but I'm not a person that responds to like repetitive questions. That drives me nuts. And so like I would get like 2 calls a day, like, how's pumping going? I'm like, great. And I'd be at the NICU and I'm like, I'm here. Like, so.
You know, I do a nursing in-service for NICU nurse residents, and I think sometimes they don't know how to greet or start conversations. And so much of it is about the milk and pumping. But there's this pressure when you start every conversation with like, so how's pumping? That the expectation is that you continue pumping and producing at this, but that's not really what I know. That's not the message they're trying to get across, but that's just how it comes across. And so what's another way we can say it? Like, did you get sleep last night? Like, you know,
or I'd say I slept for 5 hours last night. Oh, so you didn't pump for 5 hours.
They would say that?
Yeah. And I'd like, No, I did not.
So what's your opinion on a way to start a conversation with a mom in the NICU
How
who's
are you
pumping?
feeling?
Yeah.
Are you okay? Like, is pumping going okay for you? Are you getting sleep? Sleep's important, because guess what? You're not going to make milk if you're not sleeping. And I was making a lot of milk. They would ask me about milk every day, and I was stressed. And then when our fourth...
And you were not having problems producing.
No. Like, when Enzo was the last one I got discharged, they sent me home with 500 ounces. I was like, why are you asking me every day about milk then? Making me think that these kids are starving. And they have, like, opportunity for donor milk. And so, like, the way should be, like, are you okay with pumping? Is it going okay? How are you feeling? Is it painful? Like, what can I do to support you in this? And then say, if you're not pumping or if it's not working for you, that's fine too.
We have options.
We have other options. Because guess what? A lot of people don't like breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I hate pumping.
It's not fun.
It's not fun.
It's not a good time.
And like, it's not easy. And so and when people like ask me, they're like, what's your parenting advice? I'm like, if anybody tells you anything about parenting is easy, don't be friends with those people. They're not your friend. They're lying to you.
It's true.
The first 3 months are like a blur because you don't sleep.
Yeah.
Everything hurts because you're not sleeping. And all people do is like, you're not breastfeeding. You're not using organic diapers. You're not using cloth. Like people would message me and say like, you're not using cloth diapers. And I'm like, no. And they're like, you know how bad that is for the environment? I'm like, okay, so I would use like so much water a day because I'd be doing laundry, and that would be like,
babies.
Like, what do you want from me?
What would you say is something you've learned the most since the quads have entered your life? Like since they were born this past 6 months, because they just had their 6-month little birthday. What'd you say they've taught you?
They taught me patience. They taught me to lower my expectations. Just said that to someone, and they're like, I'm having twins, what's your advice? I'm like, lower your expectations.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be able to get them like dolled up every day. Yeah. You're not everything's going to be perfect. Like my house is still unorganized. I moved in 9 months ago.
Yeah.
Also, I need to accept help. I'm a very independent person and I don't ask people for help. And I remember like I called someone, I was like, I really need your help. And they were like, of course.
Yeah.
And they came to my house, and every person that I would start like saying like, they would come over and they're like, can I help you with anything? And I was like, yeah, can you fold laundry? They'd be like, this is so weird that you would let me help you. Yeah. And not that they were like offended. I asked them, they were just like, we've offered to help so many times and you said, no, I got it.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah. And they'd be like, they'd be like, do you want to take a nap? I remember always people like, you want to go lay down? I'd be like, no, I'm good. And inside I'd be like, yes.
Yeah.
I also want to leave.
Yeah.
Can I like leave the house? And now I'm like, please let me leave. Please let me go somewhere.
I think it's so cool how kids and these kind of experience in general just teach you so much about like community and humanity. And like as a friend, when you tell me something specific that you can do, like it feels so good to be able to deliver it to you. Cause I'm not just like randomly bringing you.
Like before the babies came home, like that first 2 months, almost every day someone brought us dinner, which like in the beginning I was like, I mean, you don't have to. And then they did. I'm like, heck yeah. And people that brought desserts, I'm like, these are my favorite people. They should come every week. They make dessert and appetizer. They're my favorite.
Yeah.
And like up until like a week ago or a month ago, maybe, we're still getting one family that lives in our neighborhood that my husband's a lacrosse coach in the community. And so we have a huge like community in the lacrosse community. They were still like giving us dinner once a week. And it was like, wow, amazing. And then I almost was like, can we pay her to make us dinner every day?
Yeah.
And then like, I'll buy her groceries.
Is there like a system we can work out?
It's like, can I pay you? And like everyone was so giving, and like the TikTok community was super giving, and like my husband's a realtor too. So someone gave us like so many diapers. Like I haven't bought diapers yet for the baby. We've been so fortunate.
Yeah.
And we've just been so supported. Everybody at work has been super supportive. Like my brother's coming to visit next week, and this is the first time meeting the babies. And I didn't realize it until like yesterday that I scheduled myself to work on the day he arrives. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to be there when he meets my kids. And so I just like put a message out to my coworkers, and I was like, please, like I did not realize this. And 3 people were like, yeah, I'll do it. Wow. Like you need to be there for your kids. Yeah. Like people, like I love the people I work with. I love my job.
Who's your favorite person you work with?
Obviously.
Thank you. So the fun part also about Starlyn and Bill is that they are not just like active on TikTok, but they'll actually like respond to your messages and all that. So if people want to follow along with you and keep hearing about the babies and just your antics as a quad mom +1, how can they follow you?
Calf Squad on TikTok and Instagram. We have a YouTube, which we talked a little bit about our infertility stuff on YouTube, but it's not as active as we'd like. But
okay, Calf Squad, CAFFSQUAD.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for
Is there
having
anything
me.
else you want to share
No.
that you didn't get the chance to?
I don't think so.
Okay. Love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
One of the big takeaways from my conversation with Starlyn is almost less about the craziest part of it, which is having quadruplets, and more about how much IVF and going through that process can affect someone in all aspects of their life, their relationship with themselves and others and their friends. So I just really appreciate, Starlyn, your bravery for speaking out about the hard parts and really just being compassionate towards others who are going through it. And you're on the other side with 5 kiddos. Who would have thought? Well, guys, thanks so much for being here. Starlyn and Bill, for sharing your story. You can find them on TikTok, CAF Squad. That's CAFF Squad, SQUAD. Man, I had to think about that. And go show them some love and look at their hilarious videos and a glimpse into their life with 4 babies. All right, I will see you again next week for a 12-minute talk. Have a great week.